All right, so last year when I applied for this internship with Pinhead, it turns out I was the only kid that really wanted to do something with mining and gas. And it was very shocking to them that I wanted to go work at a mine. And since mining isn't very popular as interest goes, everyone pretty much wanted to know why. And that's kind of a hard question for me to answer, but I start off saying that I am more interested in natural resources rather than just mining, because natural resources, I believe, is the best industry to be in for both investment and to be a part of, because every other industry in the world relies on them, meaning like the textile industry, tech industries, food industry, everything gets their components for what they provide from natural resources. So instead of taking some kind of element and changing it to make a profit, natural resources is like in and of itself the induction of new wealth into the economy. So there's obviously a high demand for that. And so then what I say is that mining is probably the one I'm most interested in, mainly because of the magnitude. I mean, mines are huge. Mines are huge, and they're some of the most impressive systems that humans have ever come up with. The engineering and everything behind it is incredible. And what I think is cool is that all it's trying to do is one simple little thing, which is dig valuables out of the dirt, just at a really big scale. All right. And so another appeal for a mine is, to me, it's pretty much a big sandbox. I just think it's a really cool thing. Like in this picture, I took that early morning when we were going to visit an underground mine. We saw that all lined up at 5 a.m., getting ready for shift change. So yeah, that's the big sandbox. So what I actually did was worked for a geologist. So what I actually did was work for an exploration geologist named Gary Edmondo, who has a master's in geology, and he works for this company Timberline, who employed me. What he does is he goes out and looks for gold in the soil, and the exploration process is insanely and a lot bigger than what I expected it to be. Like, before a mine is started, it spends more of its life, the site spends more of its mine life being explored and looked at before it's actually mined. For instance, the one I was working on in Timberline, that's my mentor, Gary. That's a previous pit that's already been dug. We're looking at digging underneath again. But he spent the last 7 years and over $10 million just drilling and looking for gold under there, and it's still got about 5 years before mine. And the mine life expectancy is only about 6 years. So a lot of money and a lot of time is spent doing this exploration stuff, so it has to be done right before the big money is put in to actually get the gold out. All right, so where am I at? All right, so how I got there was I drove myself 12 hours through the desert to Nevada, where I met Gary in a small town called Eureka. And this town pretty much was based on mining. There was no other industry or anything. Everyone you saw there had something to do with the mine industry. You'd see shift change was absolutely insane. 5:30, both ends, shift changed. You'd work a 12-hour shift, and buses go in and out, and you'll see that happen. It's a lot of men and a lot of work that they're doing. And so, all right. So that's the Lookout Mountain Pit. That's pretty much where I spent most of my time working. That's the resource they were working on expanding. So what I did most of the time was soil samples, rock samples, mapping outcrops. I got very good at using using the GPS unit, what Gary has in his hand there. That's a PDF, a professional GPS unit. And with that, we were about within 3 meters accuracy, pretty much anywhere we were, underground or anything. So those are pretty cool. I got good at that. And what we would do for a soil sample, that's what we're doing there. Walk along a straight line on a grid, dig a hole every time the GPS tells us to, and then with that, those results would be taken to an assay lab, which there they would microanalyze for something small like 2 ppm, 2 ppm gold. They'd also analyze for mercury and arsenic because those are indicators. And so that's one thing I got used to. And then another very cool system we started to use that was not very typical for exploration geologists was the spectrometer. So what this thing did was shine light at rocks that we put on it, and based on the light shined there and then collected back in a sensor, the spectrometer could tell us kind of what kind of clays were in the rock based on how much they reflected different frequencies. And so Gary is one of the very few geologists that actually use this in exploration. It helps him a lot because he knows a lot about how different clay alterations will yield different types of gold. And all right, so here's some of the data that I actually collected. See the larger dots on the screen? This is in a gulch called the Oswego on a 23-mile long property that Timberline owns. So anyway, each dot represents a different ppm. The larger ones are larger ppms. This first one is arsenic. That's one of the indicators, and you can see that there are 2 somewhat trends there. And that's the first thing that Gary would look at, is where he might be putting the drill. And then based on this map, you can definitely see those trends kind of keep together. And so the goal is to look for gold, and when gold can only be found with mercury and arsenic, Gary will use this soil stuff to try to pinpoint better drill holes. And then here's the actual gold assay. So it's soil samples. It's not as precise as rock samples, but you can still see that the gold higher ppms are within where the trends were. So that makes sense. And then, so if we can just assay straight for gold, why would we even assay for things like mercury and arsenic? Well, they're actually almost as important as looking for gold, because gold can't be found without those things. And so, all right, so, oh my God. All right, so the arsenic and mercury are found always with gold, and with a gold survey like this, you can see that we didn't get very high ppms just south of where that larger bubble is. And that's probably not because the dirt is less yielding there. It's probably because of our soil sampling methods. So knowing that arsenic stuff, Gary will probably put several drill holes all up and down where we saw lots of mercury and arsenic, even though we didn't get any gold there yet. It's part of the exploration process. Okay, so I bet the question everyone's wondering is, I spent a month in Nevada looking for gold. Did I actually find gold? I didn't ever get to see one little piece of gold. But that is not a bad thing, because I was working in an area in Nevada, which is only found in Nevada and a small place in China, where this new thing called the Carlin Trend is, which means it's part of a Carlin-type deposit, which was found first in Nevada. And that's something that is where the gold in the soil is submicron size, like it's so small you can't see with a microscope. The only way to get the gold out is by cyanide leaching. And just because it's so small doesn't mean there's not a lot of it. So these gold mines are still very, very prosperous, even though you don't actually ever get to see big gold or even think there might be gold in the soil. But there actually is quite a bit. Okay. All right, so a typical day for me looked like waking up early because Nevada is very hot and we beat a lot of the sun. Do a lot of outdoors work, a lot of hiking. We'd often hike around a large plot of land that's looking to be explored and just talk to each other about what we think the soil is trying to tell us through outcrops. I learned a lot of things like how to make maps without the GPS, with triangulating by using known points on a map to, and the angles of them to draw with a compass to draw an intersection where I would be. I could plot that. And then we took lots of data on slopes and dips where the rocks will, where a fault is, there's always there's some kind of an angle to it, and that angle is really important for where we might place a drill over here. So we got to map out a lot of the angles, and then I drew some cross-section maps where a cross-section is what it would look like if you cut the soil in half, or cut the soil down the middle and looked at it like as if, it's hard to explain. You looked at all the layers, and you could see all the faults and things. And so we'd often look for when different layers of rocks are missing or are on top of each other to see what kinds of faults we're looking for. Okay. All right, so outside of work life. I worked a lot, 10-hour days. Not a bad thing. I loved it. And I also lived the life of a traveling geologist. We literally got done with work and went to our hotel rooms and slept. We stayed in hotels, we ate at restaurants. I did a few cool things while I was there. I got to go on an underground mine tour, which was probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen. We took a 2,000-foot elevator down that only took a minute. So it was moving very fast, very dark, and a little spooky. Once you were down there, it was not very spooky. But so that was one of the things I did outside of work. But there's not a whole lot to do in nowhere, Nevada. All right. So, in conclusion, I would like to thank the Timberline Resources for my opportunity to work with their company, especially Gary Armando, my mentor, for really taking me under his wing and showing me the ropes, and still treating me like an equal in the field. Also, his coworker Lucia Patterson, who taught me a lot and let me stay at her house for a couple days. I would also like to thank Pinhead Board of Directors for finding me adequate for this internship, and of course, Sarah Holbrook, Pinhead Executive Director, for finding my actual internship. I can't leave out my parents. They're always there for me, and of course, the Telluride Mountain School for preparing me for this and encouraging me for this. Thank you.